Wes Scott is a connector, a conduit, if I may say, because he and his company, EventWorks, are the powerhouse that organizes energy conferences. Because of this, Wes has his pulse on the energy industry and during his career has seen the energy transition evolve. Let's welcome Wes as we discuss this changing landscape. Hi, welcome, Wes. It's so great to have you.
Thanks very much, Maria. I'm happy to be here.
Well,
Thanks for having me.
exactly, because in the intro I mentioned how you're a conduit. You've been in the the energy industry for a long time, and I'm just curious about how it all started for you and how the conversation is changing before we dive into the list of questions that we talked about.
I love it. When I was in university, I had the opportunity to work for an association, which is the Canadian Institute of Mining, Metallurgy, and Petroleum. And I was a summer student that forgot to leave. And I really liked what they did, which was, it was conferences. It was all about, introducing new technology. I was addicted to selling the advertising and the sponsorships, and I forgot to leave. And I have never done anything but this now. I've only worked with, 3 or 4 companies, including EventWorks, where you're right, we are a conduit. We bring together innovators, technology suppliers, government, together with, the industries that we serve. That might be oil and gas, it might be renewables. And we've done it all around the world. I've had the opportunity to work, almost probably 30 countries doing this. And it is a very rewarding business to be in. You get to see startups, in the very early days. They come and do a pitch presentation, and then years later, you read, that they're doing great things.
Wonderful. Now I know that the Smart Energy event, it's held in Halifax every year. I believe it's every April. And you're the sponsor of this podcast. Thank you. But why was Halifax chosen? Because it's going into its 20th year. But why Halifax?
So it's a long story, and well before we got involved, before EventWorks got involved, Bob Williamson, who is the founder of Smart Energy Event, is born and raised in Nova Scotia, lives in Halifax. Bob is an entrepreneur. He is an early adopter, and he just seems to know everybody. And when I worked for the association way back in the 90s, the late 90s, Bob was out west with an offshore magazine that he owned at that time. And he was quite an entrepreneur then and was out connecting. And so he sold the publication at some point in the early 2000s. And I think because of his connection with government and industries, and he really goes out of his way to support startups. Like, he is so connected in that community. He saw an opportunity to start bringing people together to discuss renewables, and very specifically for Nova Scotia, to find new energy sources for Nova Scotia. And as we know, offshore gas didn't really work out for Nova Scotia, and the renewables just became more and more important for the province. And that's really where it began. He just kept connecting people, very much like us, and he would just start bringing them together for this renewable event that formed into Smart Energy.
How, in your opinion, how has the energy industry changed throughout the years, specifically in Canada and like from coast to coast? Each province is different, right?
Each province, it's hard to go through each province, but I'll tell you, I live here in Alberta. I'm in Calgary, And of course, we get the label that we're just an oil and gas province, which is a little unfair, but it's not. It has been the case for a long time. But when you look at provinces like British Columbia and Nova Scotia, they were very early adopters into renewables. Even Ontario was one of the very first provinces to have incentives for EVs. And I really think that change is driven by a few factors. Governments tell you have to do it, so regulatory changes. They're looking for ways to save money or make money. And the public is looking for change. And lastly is technology. Technology has evolved so much. The first wind turbine didn't come to Canada until 1993. Funny enough, in Alberta, in Pincher Creek. And you think about that. That's 30 years. And we're still having the conversations about trying to move provinces off of heating oil, coal-powered plants.
Mm-hmm.
We moved everything over to natural gas-powered plants to get off, coal. It takes time to do this evolution. And sometimes the technology isn't where we need it to be, to drive it forward. And I think the real change across Canada has been our consciousness to climate change. And it's taken us a long time to get there. And I think, different provinces have got their head around it much faster than others. Mm-hmm. And climate change is one of those things that we all have to fight together. Emission reduction is something that we all have to fight together. And events like Smart Energy are exactly what that is about. How do we achieve net zero by 2050? And it is going to take every technology we have. It's going to take every energy source that we have. It's going to take change in regulatory. It's going to take change in mindset. And we're going to have to do it together. There can't be an us and them.
And that is being reflected in this year's program because it's being expanded for the Smart Energy Conference. You're talking about different topics, and what would those be? What's the expansion?
So what we've decided to do is very much largely based on what the delegates have told us in post-event surveys and recent surveys that we've done, is we have largely done panel-driven presentations for years and years. And over the last couple of years, since Ventworks has got involved with Bob, we've added some capacity to the team that we can start to take on more sessions. And one of the things that people are asking for is more deep dive presentations on the technologies. They want to hear more about EV infrastructure, EVs, how is this changing? They want to hear about hydrogen vehicles. They want to hear about smart grid and energy efficiency. What are different provinces doing? What are different municipalities doing in these spaces? And so what we'll be doing with Smart Energy in April of 2024 is we will have 3 concurrent session rooms all happening at the same time. We were very fortunate in 2023 that we sold the conference out. Mm-hmm. And if anybody was there, they'll know it was quite crowded in the main conference room. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to space people out into 3 large conference spaces, depending on what their needs are. Do they want more technical presentations? We have a dedicated day all to hydrogen, a dedicated day to energy storage. But we're not going to lose those high-level panel discussions that we also have, because sometimes that's just enough. That's all they need. And we're adding more people to our advisory board that are helping to drive this change in the way that Canada produces its energy. And I'm excited about that. And actually yesterday we invited a new young lady onto our advisory board. She's 19 years old. She's in her first year of university at York. And this young lady has been involved with the David Suzuki Foundation. She's involved with the UN, and she knows more about climate change than I do. And she's 19 years old, and
Wow.
she's going to change the world. And we have to bring the youth into this because they're going to inherit this. They have to drive the change. And the more times that we can get people like Sarah involved, the further we're going to be for the planning for the future. So we're super excited about, rolling out a bigger, more robust program for 2024.
And you're looking right now, you're doing a call for speakers. You're looking for really great. And what type of knowledge or backgrounds do you want? What is your wish list for speakers?
You know what? We're looking for change makers. And, Smart Energy Event is made up of innovators, climate change managers or sustainability managers within municipalities. There's provincial government, there's federal government, there's research and development, there's post-secondary. All of these people have information and knowledge that we want to share.
Right.
And we also want to invite more companies from across Canada to come and showcase their technologies. What are they working on? And we're going to dig it out of somebody's garage or somebody's basement, and we want it presented on that stage because there's answers out there, and we want to just keep harnessing that and bring it to the
There's a lot
forefront.
of people doing great things in Atlantic Canada, across the country, in the world. It's mind-boggling when you think about it. It's exciting times.
It is, and it's so neat to see so many companies that we've watched for the last decade or so really evolve. Back in 2010, we developed a brand called Global Clean Energy Congress, and we were a little ahead of our time. And even then, we were talking about emissions reduction and ESG, and we were a bit ahead of our time. We didn't stick with it, but I'm watching a lot of these companies that we met back then flourish into multi-billion-dollar companies now.
Wow.
David Keith has a really good example of that. He's the company researcher out of the USC and then eventually Harvard, where they took air, fed it through a very complicated machine, and stripped the CO2 out of it, and then pushed the air back out. It's things like that you don't know where this is going to happen, but collectively we will find those solutions.
Exactly. And the Smart Energy brand, you're expanding. I mean, it's not only going to be held in Halifax anymore.
All right. We'll tell you about it. Yes, we got involved with Smart Energy Halifax in about 2020. Actually, funny enough, Bob and I got reintroduced to one another years later by a mutual friend. And when COVID hit, he came to us and we worked together to produce a virtual event. And it really helped develop Smart Energy almost as a national brand because all of a sudden, as a virtual event, people from across the country could attend. And we did that for 2 years. And what we recognized was there's a really great opportunity to host one on the opposite side of Canada. The needs, if you'd like, of Western Canada are slightly different than Atlantic Canada. And we want to bring very similar concept to Vancouver. So we have Smart Energy Vancouver that will happen in November 2024. We actually have the dates, the 5th and 6th. We're being hosted by the University of British Columbia. And our goal there is really to start building that smart energy community out west here. And Halifax will continue to be the national conference. Ultimately, we want it to be the hub. And by meeting new people, connecting new people out here in the West, we want them to get to Halifax in the spring, in 2025 and moving forward. So that's our goal. We don't anticipate it to be a super large event. about 100, 150 people in Vancouver. And it will focus on some of the same topics because we're having the same challenges. We want to examine technology. We want to have municipalities and utilities involved heavily. That's largely who we cater to, and we keep building.
Excellent. So what's next? What's next for EventWorks? Are you working with other type of industries within renewable the energies?
We are.
You have another one.
Yeah, you know what? We have one more up our sleeve that we're working on called SMR Canada, so Small Modular Reactor Canada Summit,
Right.
and that's going to happen here in Calgary. What we've learned from smart energy, we have some events in petrochemicals, and we even have an oil sands event. All of them are chasing the same thing. They have to reduce their emissions.
Right.
They have to create clean energy in order to keep producing. And small modular reactors, SMRs, have this ability to produce a great amount of clean energy. There's a long ways to go before we're there. Nuclear has been very popular in Ontario. We know that. They'll have their first installation of an SMR before anybody else. But we feel the time is right to bring together the stakeholders. Stakeholders are the end users, Ontario Power, the ATCOs, but also the technology suppliers, X Energy, Moltex, companies like that, ARC.
We've had them on this podcast. Yeah,
Exactly.
wonderful people.
Together with the investment community, the regulators, the federal government. Let's get them in a room from across Canada and have these conversations. How do we move SMRs forward? One of the things that I'm super excited about is there's a great opportunity for First Nations to get in on the ground floor. And this is a great opportunity for economic reconciliation. So we've got an advisory board that we're building. We've had such great interest in it already. We've got 23 people from across the country that are sitting on this advisory board. And they will really help us guide what the topics are for this 2-day conference that's taking place in March in Calgary. So SMR Canada is the other one that we're launching in 2024 that we're very excited about.
You should be. I mean, there's a lot of great work that's being done and conversations that need to be had. Wonderful.
Absolutely. And that's what EventWorks does. We're not the thought leaders. As you said, we're the connectors, we're the conduit. We provide the platform and invite people to come together and share their knowledge and network and do business. That's what we're good at, and we'll continue to do.
Yeah, and you're like your own SMR. You look at it. You generate energy, you generate ideas, you generate conversation. It's great.
I love that. I'm gonna steal that. Thank you, Maria.
Play on words. So what's next for Smart Energy and EventWorks? I know you've talked about a few other things that you have up your sleeve, but if someone was attending the event, what is the best way that someone can get the most out of these events?
You know what? Participation. It really is about getting involved with the community. And when I say community, it is just that. The people that come to Smart Energy are a collective of like-minded individuals that are trying to drive change. They understand that we have to change and get involved.
Mm-hmm.
Come from wherever it is, whatever organization you work for, come and learn, come and meet the other people that are driving that change, come and see the new technology that's being developed, and then take it back and start implementing it. Leadership through innovation is the theme for Smart Energy 2024. We have to innovate, we have to lead. Definitely. And the only way that this gets done, again, is collectively, we all have to get on the same path.
I agree. And I really believe it's about asking a lot of questions too, and making sure that, you educate, everybody is educated and getting the best information that they can.
Yeah, I think that's one of the nice things about smart energy is, you know, the number of people that you can just walk up to and be able to ask questions. They're such a knowledgeable group, but they want to share with whoever wants to ask those questions. It doesn't necessarily have to be at the session. It can be during the networking breaks. It can be during the receptions. They genuinely are there because they want to share their knowledge. And that's good for all of us. Something else that we're doing with most of our conferences now is we've moved away from the microphone in the back of the room and allowing people to ask questions that way, and we've moved everything to Slido, which is essentially asking questions via your phone. And the rationale is we've really found that the interaction when you have microphones is not very good. People are really shy to get up and ask a question because they maybe don't want to look dumb in front of their peers. But they really do have a very good question that probably 10 other people in the room are wondering. By putting it on Slido, they can ask the question anonymously, and the engagement rate that we are seeing between our speakers and our audience has gone up tenfold by
Yeah.
just switching to this electronic Q&A session. So we'll be bringing that into Smart Energy as well.
Great. That's one thing I've noticed, because I'm new to, renewable energy and learning everything I can. And I have a lot of questions. And I find that people, more than any other industry that I've experienced, are happy to talk about it. People, there's an excitement in the air. There's a curiosity and a kinship. It's really cool to see. People
It
are
is an amazing
excited about
community, isn't it?
it. It really is. It's
Yeah.
great. I just want to wrap things up. I mean, this is just so great to talk with you today, and I appreciate your time. And we'll be seeing you at the Smart Energy event in Halifax and in Vancouver. And in the meantime, thanks for joining me.
Well, thank you. Obviously, we're a big fan of the podcast. We are a proud sponsor. We want to keep doing more. Reimagined energy is really what we're all trying to talk about. Let's move off what we were doing and
Yeah.
move towards the future. And we all have to do it before 2050. So thank you for the opportunity.
That was Wes Scott of EventWorks, who is the force behind connecting people in the renewable energy industry. Remember, the Smart Energy event is looking for speakers. So if you have something important to say, reach out to Wes and his team immediately. The Smart Energy event sponsors this podcast. Make sure you register. I'm your host, Maria McGowan. Thanks for your time today.